Hey everybody, we're back. We're back with chapter 13, in which Eleanor discovers an unexpected use for soap and water, and Cimarine has difficulty with the dragon. You might say that Cimarine has to deal with the dragon. Hey! This is completely unrelated, but I was watching Lucifer before I sat down to read. And the episode I'm on is called The Trip to Stabby Town, which, by the way, is totally the name of my memoirs. So we finally find out why the wizards are working together with the bad dragon. They are trying to get their hands on the king's crystal, which will allow them to see every single magical item or item of interest or concentration of magic in the world, and then they can go and get that thing. The Stone Prince is just, even he has some shade to throw. I love all of these characters, but for some reason I love him the most. Aside from Cimarine, of course. So Anne Terrell the wizard is like, you two princesses, I don't feel you're a threat, but this guy maybe is a threat, so I'm gonna, like, have to turn him into gravel. And the prince is like, do I have to listen to this bitch? Cimarine also, of course, has a smooth comeback. She says, you wouldn't be talking about gravel if you were the one who had to sweep the floor. Cimarine knows the situation is dangerous, so she is just shading the hell out of Anne Terrell to try to keep him distracted. And then Anne Terrell is like, I'm sick of your shit, I'm gonna turn this guy into gravel. He raises his staff, and Eleonora just yells, stop that. And then he's like, Myrrh? And she's like, I said stop it. And she throws her bucket of soapy water over his head because she's a queen. And then we find out what happens to wizards when they get hit with soapy water, which is like a through line in all of this series, pretty much, is defeating wizards. Soapy water, hint of lemon, melts them, like the Wicked Witch of the West. We'll find out a little bit more about that later. But Anne Terrell is melting. Cimarine, by the way, is a smart cookie, of course. As soon as he falls to the floor, she, like, kicks his staff away from him so he can't use it. Cimarine quickly gets them together and she goes, okay, we need some buckets, 2 for each of us. We are gonna fill up some soapy water and go defeat some wizards. Cimarine also makes a pit stop to grab the feathers that she got from that MacGuffin bird a while back, if you recall. So Cimarine has them all link arms while still holding buckets, but I feel like it might have been smarter if they just like put their foot on top of the other person's foot. Like, if you only have to be touching, I mean, I guess it doesn't say that you only have to be touching, maybe you have to be, like, connected somehow. Couldn't you, like, hook legs or something? Just enough to travel together, you know what I mean? You don't, this awkward, like, link arms while still holding a heavy bucket of soapy water. But they do all teleport to where the dragons are watching the competition to become king. So once again, the Stone Prince, my boy, they get there, and of course the dragons are like, what are you talking about? Warwick's about to take the challenge. We can't just interrupt our important ceremony for a couple of princesses and some stone guy who are just freaking out for no reason. So the Stone Prince says, at hero school, we were always taught that if you couldn't persuade anyone to help you with something, it meant that you were supposed to do it by yourself. He's just bringing the logic. I like him. Unfortunately, they don't know where the wizards are to throw water over them. Cimarine is like, fuck, we don't know where the wizards are, but I bet I know somebody who can help us find them. We're gonna use another teleportation feather. We're going to Morwen's house. That is the end of chapter 13. I'm going to stop here because I'm lazy, but I'm hoping that I will be able to finish this book this weekend, and pretty soon all of my lovely, lovely, patient people will be getting the read-along of Dealing with Dragons. Thank you so much for your patience. I love you all. Alright guys, if I look a little windblown, it's because I just got done taking care of the horses, put my pajama pants on, and we're going to hopefully finish Dealing with Dragons today. I think there's just the 2 more chapters, so let's get into it. Chapter 14, in which the wizards try to make trouble, and Cimarine does something about it. If you hear chewing noises in the background, that's the dog. I gave her a chewy. They get to Morwen's house, and they tell her the situation, and Morwen goes in and gets a magic mirror, which allows them to find the location of Zeminar. Luckily, the wizards are all together in one place. If they were all spread out, Cimarine only has 1 magic feather left, so she'd have to pick which one she wanted to melt. Morwen, though, Morwen's going with them because that's just how she rolls. Cimorine and her companions waste no time. They don't stand around asking the wizards, what's your evil plan? They get there, they see the wizards standing in a row doing something with their magic staffs, and they all just grab their buckets of soapy water and start dousing. Unfortunately, just when they think they've gotten all the wizards, who should come out of the underbrush but Zeminar?
Surprise, motherfucker.
Zeminar is like, yeah, you interrupted the spell, but the enchantment should hold for the rest of the time that Wareg is holding the stone, so you're out of luck. Zeminar decides to play dirty, and he puts Morwen between himself and the soapy water. You know, that whole, I'll get her kind of thing that bad guys always do. And he's like, if you melt me, you're gonna melt your friend as well. But the Stone Prince, again, the Stone Prince is like, nah, fam. And he throws the bucket of soapy water over both Morwen and the wizard. And as expected, the wizard begins to melt. I love what this book does visually here. As he gets smaller and smaller, you probably can't see it, the words get smaller and smaller as he melts. And the prince's logic is flawless. Everyone's like, why didn't you melt Morwen? And Morwen's like, why would I melt in soapy water? I'm very clean living. And the prince says, I thought as much, the Stone Prince said in a satisfied tone. Nobody who lives in a house as clean as yours could possibly melt in a bucket of soap suds. So really, whether you are a magic person and you melt in water, especially soapy water, really comes down to your attitude and how you keep yourself. Which probably means that I would melt if you dumped soapy water over me. Ugh. Now we are going to harken back to something that again happened much earlier in the book when Cimorine happened to pick up a rock from the Caves of Fire and Night. Morwen, she had to pull it out of her pocket while she was giving Morwen a handkerchief, and Morwen's like, oh hey, that's just what I need. Convenient. Some things in this book can be summed up as a little too convenient, and if I had one complaint, that would be it. It's like everything is like, oh yes, we had this thing. Of course, it does go to the trouble of showing you the character acquiring that thing, rather than some books which are too lazy to even do that, and are just like, yeah, of course my character knew how to play the guitar all along. But Morwen drops the stone onto the wizard's staff, and it cancels out the spell. With the spell cancelled, Wareg drops the stone, and he comes flying to find out what happened to the wizards, and is pissed off to find that it is, in fact, Cimorine and co. Fortunately for them, Wareg grabs the first person to hand and stuffs them into his mouth, and that happens to be the Stone Prince. It doesn't go well for Wareg's teeth.
Oh, good lord. Sir Eglamour.
And we end out the chapter with one of the dragon judges who was flying with Wareg coming along and seeing Wareg chomping down on what it appears to be a person. And he's like, WTF is going on here? And he's taken them all into custody to take them back for the new king to sort out when the new king is chosen. And that is the end of that chapter. And we'll be on to chapter 15. I'm going to go get my tea, and then we will finish off dealing with dragons. And some chocolate as well. Have you guys tried these dark, thin Reese's? They are so good. Here we are for chapter 15, which is called In Which the Dragons Crown a New King and Cimorine Gets a New Job. Cimorine and her group are brought back, and what do you know? It just happened that the new king of the dragons was crowned, and you'll never guess who it was. You probably guessed. It's Kazul. Kazul is the new king of the dragons. Hooray! They are brought before Kazul, and she begins her judgment, and even though she knows that Wareg is suspicious as fuck, she's like, what other proof do you have? And Morwen steps forward with a stone that she had picked up that the wizards were using, that Cimorine had dropped like her own rock onto to cancel out the spell. And it turns out that it also is a rock from the Caves of Fire and Night, which is the same place that Colin's stone comes from, and why the wizards were faffing around in there. Because if you have a piece of the caves, you can cast spells that affect other things from the caves. Apparently, that's how it works. Then Alianora comes in clutch because Kazul is like, well, how would Wareg poison the king? He can't carry the dragon's bane. It's too dangerous. But then they're like, what if he had a special bag for it that, you know, protected him from its effects? And then Alianora is like, exactly like the bag that I saw him wearing when he went to go visit the king last? Maybe? Is it that one? Then Wareg does something completely unexpected. As he's standing there, stared at by all of the other dragons who are very pissed at him, he also starts to shrink. He doesn't melt, he just shrinks. And he shrinks into himself until in a flurry of scales, poof, he's transformed into a toad. Kazul explains, that is what happens when a dragon stops acting like a dragon. And everyone then looks at Alianora. They're like, oh, okay, your dragon just turned into a toad. What do we do with you? Fortunately, the Stone Prince steps up and he's like, would you like to marry me? And she's like, I'd like that very much. And also, of course, they point out that the Stone Prince technically fulfilled the prophecy that was given to him because he aided a king by fighting Warag. Also, he was the one who killed Zeminar by splashing the water on him. Then we all enjoy a coronation party. Kazoo was crowned. There was a lot of delicious food. The dragons went to go check out the blackberry thicket and found more wizards there, trying to figure out what had happened to the other wizards. Got rid of them. One of the wizards may have been eaten. And of course, Cimmerine, who has been nervous this whole time that maybe she won't be Kazul's princess anymore, because the King of Dragons isn't supposed to have a princess. Don't worry, Kazul lays all her fears to rest. She's like, tomorrow we have to pack up. We're going to have so much to organize in our new royal caves. And of course you're coming with me, Cimmerine. Like, I'm the king, so I can do whatever I want. And if I say that I want to have a princess, even though I'm not supposed to have one, I'm gonna. Or you can name yourself my librarian, or my cook, or whatever the heck you want. Cimmerine finally gets a chance to go visit Alianora and the Stone Prince, who are moving out of that place. I don't know where they're going next. And they talk a bit about what's being done about the wizards. The dragons can't go to war with the wizards, but all of the wizards have fled the area, especially after a few of them were eaten. So they are staying out of dragon territory for right now. They're like, oh, well, we killed Zeminar, but then they remember hearing that wizards don't stay dead when you melt them, so he will be back. Ah, and good news, Alianora and the Stone Prince are going to Morwin's, and Morwin is going to have a go at turning him back into a not stone person. And I love this. I don't know Alianora, the Stone Prince said. I'm beginning to get used to myself this way, and there are certain advantages. There are disadvantages too, Alianora said.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more.
The Stone Prince agrees. He says, we had better see Morwin as quickly as possible. So Alianora and her Stone Prince take off, and they tell Cimmerine that they hope she lives happily ever after, and the final lines of the book are, happily ever after. I don't think it's quite what you mean, Alianora, Cimmerine murmured to the empty tunnel. But one way or another, I rather think I will. And that is the end of Dealing with Dragons. Right? Yeah. I mean, we could talk about it a little bit. It is very middle grade to young adult, so you can definitely read it with your young kids, but there are things in it that adults will get and find funny. Obviously, I did not read every funny or clever line. Definitely check this book out. If you want to listen to the audiobook, it is a full cast audio. It is so good. I think the one that exists right now was recorded from the CDs, so the quality is not perfect, but like still worth it for the full cast audio. Very well done. Definitely one of my favorite books growing up. And still to this day, I don't think I can quite explain to you how snappy and well done the writing is, just on a craft level. Like, this book is trying to teach me how to write more concisely, but still get great points across. I think it's great to study, and I think to really get it, you do have to read it, so go check it out for yourself. I really do recommend it. There needs to be a movie of this book. I'm sorry, why isn't there a movie of this book? I don't know. There are other books in this series. This is the Enchanted Forest series. I find that the other books are not nearly as good as this first one. This first one is so solid. It's practically perfect in every way. There are elements that I don't love, but honestly, this book makes up for it in droves. One of the things that I do know about the other books is that the last one was actually written first, and then the author went back and she wrote the first one, and then the second, I think there are 4, and then she modified the last one so it would fit in with the others. And you can kind of tell, like, the last book I feel is the weakest one, and I think it's because it was written first. I think as far as strength goes, the first one and the second one are pretty strong, and they just kind of go downhill from there. I do like the second one, though. It's got a bit less Cimmerine in it. It stars her romantic interest. You get to follow him for a while, see what he's up to before he eventually meets Cimmerine. Love, blah, blah, blah. But I really appreciate this book that it doesn't end with Cimarine falling in love, and it does show that, like, you can find happiness in whatever form it takes for you. You could definitely, in this book, and even in later books, read Cimarine aromantic or asexual. I think that's also what drew me to this book, because I'm asexual, and having a character who just really just wasn't into that. You know, she just wasn't into that scene. It was very refreshing for young me, because so many characters, the emphasis is on will they fall in love. And it also goes to show that you can have an excellent book with minimal romance in it. And I know there are so many people who tell me I won't even read a book if it doesn't have romance, but this book shows that you should give those books a shot, even if there's no romance, because a book without romance can still have a lot to recommend it. I think that's all I wanted to talk about with this book. What did you guys think of me reading a book that I enjoy for a read-along? It was fun to reread it on my end, but I just got done actually editing the first part that's going to go out tomorrow as of filming this, and honestly it was incredibly boring to edit. Which just kind of sucks, because like when I'm editing something that I eviscerated and made a lot more jokes, it's like fun to edit. So I'm like, oh yeah, I made that joke, oh ha 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 ha. But this one had a lot fewer opportunities for that, and so it wasn't nearly as fun just from an editing angle, and I hope you guys stuck with it and this wasn't boring for you. But I think, unless you guys like tell me that you absolutely loved it and you really desperately want more of this, and I mean like a lot of you tell me that you want more of this, I'm probably going to go back to reading books that are not as good. Because honestly, it's just more fun to tear things apart. It just is. This is Julian from the future here reporting in as well. The numbers of views on this particular read-along were the worst that I've gotten. So it could be a number of factors, such as this is a lesser-known book, or people just aren't in the mood for it because, you know, it is right now, as of recording this, still the apocalypse, so maybe they just isn't the right time. But I think that it being a book that I enjoyed is a big factor, and I think negative stuff, as we well know, will always get more views, honestly. So, but if you did stick with this, I really do appreciate you. Thank you so much for viewing. Thanks for sticking with me and finding out a little bit about what I like and a little bit about what formed me as an author. I hope that you will go check out Dealing with Dragons. It is so good and so fun. Feel free to mention in the comments what books formed you. What were the books of your childhood or young adulthood that really formed not only you as a person, but you as a writer, if you are a writer. Okay guys, that's it for this read along. Keep an eye on things for whenever I eventually, you know I'm never in a hurry with these things, you guys. Keep an eye out for when I eventually put up a vote for the next read along, although I might just go ahead and read the second place winner from this last vote. We'll see how it goes. Don't forget that you can support me over on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to exclusive content, and right now you're helping me self-publish my next book. And I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye! Did someone say patrons? It was me. I said patrons. Just now. Try to keep up. This month's patrons are Adrienne, Lennox, Amanda, Irene, Jenny, Jesper, Lisa, Ryakio, Sabby Panda, Savvy, Scribbling Cat, and Zaire. And thanks again to all of my amazing patrons for all their support. I especially appreciate that you're able to stick around in these interesting times.